My best friend slept with my husband, but she didn't expect who showed up at the baby shower. What was meant to be a joyful day turned into a storm of shame, secrets, and shocking betrayal no one could escape. The baby shower was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Pink balloons filled the living room, tables overflowed with cupcakes, and everyone smiled at me as if nothing in the world could go wrong. I wore a light blue dress, one that hugged my belly gently, and tried to breathe through the nerves. But behind my smile, my heart was a storm. I already knew the truth: my best friend had slept with my husband. The two people I trusted most had broken me in ways I didn't think possible. Yet here I was, hosting a celebration as if everything were perfect. She was even there. My so-called best friend, standing just a few steps away, holding a gift bag with tissue paper spilling over the top, grinning like she hadn't destroyed my marriage. Every time our eyes met, I felt my stomach twist. Still, I kept smiling. I had a plan. This wasn't just a baby shower anymore. It was the stage for a truth no one expected, especially her. I watched her laugh with my cousins, pretending to be part of the family she had already betrayed. She even touched her necklace nervously, the one I had given her for her birthday years ago, back when I believed we'd be friends forever. David, my husband, moved around the room like nothing was wrong, greeting guests, carrying trays, even kissing me on the cheek as if he hadn't ruined everything. His act was so convincing that half the people in the room probably thought we were the perfect couple. But I couldn't unsee the late-night messages I had found. The ones that weren't meant for me. The words that made it clear their affair wasn't a one-time mistake but something deeper, uglier. Every time she laughed, I felt my hands shake. But I reminded myself, today wasn't the day for anger or tears. Today was about patience. Because the moment I had been waiting for was almost here, and neither of them had the slightest clue. The living room buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses, but in my head, everything was muted. My aunt asked me something about baby names, and I nodded absently, keeping one eye on the door. I had sent the invitation weeks ago, secretly, without telling anyone. Just one envelope slipped into the mailbox when no one was watching. The name written on it wasn't meant to be part of today's celebration. At least, not in the way they all imagined. My so-called best friend kept stealing glances at David. Quick, hidden looks that made my skin crawl. If anyone else noticed, they didn't say a word. Maybe they were blind. Maybe they didn't want to see. I rested my hand on my stomach, forcing a deep breath. My baby deserved better than this circus. But sometimes the truth has to be dragged into the light, no matter how much it burns. And just as I thought that, I heard it, the knock at the door. The sound that shifted the air in the room and froze my heart in my chest. The room went quiet for a moment, like everyone sensed something unusual. David glanced toward the hallway, but before he could move, I stood up, smoothing my dress over my belly. "I'll get it," I said, my voice calm but firm. When I opened the door, the sight of him nearly took my breath away. He looked exactly the same, maybe older, maybe colder, but undeniably familiar. For a split second, my best friend's smile froze where she stood, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. Gasps filled the room. My aunt dropped her cup of punch. Someone whispered a name I hadn't heard spoken out loud in years. I stepped aside slowly, letting him in. The weight of his presence swallowed the cheerful decorations, the pink ribbons and cake and balloons. Suddenly, the baby shower wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a reckoning. And the way my best friend's hands trembled around her glass told me she knew exactly why I had invited him. He walked in with measured steps, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. My best friend. The color drained from her face as if all the air had been sucked out of the house. "Hello, Claire," he said evenly. Just 2 words, but they sliced through the silence sharper than any scream. She stammered something, a laugh, maybe, or a half-formed excuse, but her voice broke before she could finish. David shifted uncomfortably beside her, his arm tightening against his side, eyes darting between the two of them. No one understood yet. Not the guests, not the cousins clutching their teacups, not the neighbors who had come to celebrate new life. But the tension was electric, undeniable. Everyone could feel that something ugly was about to surface. I didn't speak. I just watched. This was her moment, not mine. And the way she bit her lip, fighting back panic, told me she knew her carefully crafted lies were about to collapse. "Why are you here?" Claire finally whispered, her voice trembling so badly the whole room heard it. She set her glass down, but her hands still shook, betraying her panic. "Funny," he said, his gaze never leaving hers. "That's exactly what I wanted to ask you." The silence was unbearable. Guests exchanged confused looks, unsure whether to stay seated or leave quietly. My cousin cleared his throat, but no one dared speak. David tried to step in, his fake smile plastered on. "Maybe this isn't the right time." "Not the right time?" The man cut him off, his tone sharp. "You made it the right time the moment you thought no one would find out." My chest tightened, but I stayed still. This wasn't my fight. This was the confrontation I had been waiting for, the one that would finally reveal the truth I had carried alone for too long. And with every second that passed, I saw Claire unraveling, her mask slipping further with each stolen breath. Claire's voice cracked. "Please, not here." She looked around desperately, as if searching for an exit, as if the pastel balloons and smiling baby-themed banners might somehow protect her. But there was no escape. "You should have thought about that before," he shot back, his jaw tight. "Before you pretended to love me, before you ran into his arms." He flicked his gaze at David, and the room collectively gasped. David's face flushed, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to explain but couldn't find the words. He reached for Claire's arm, but she yanked it back as though his touch burned. The whispers spread like wildfire among the guests. Betrayal. Affair. Lies. Words that hung heavy in the air, making every breath harder to take. I stood quietly, my hand resting on my stomach, watching as the life they tried to build in the shadows crumbled in the light of day. This wasn't just a baby shower anymore. It was the funeral of their secrets. The silence in the room was suffocating, heavy like a storm about to break. I could hear the faint buzzing of the fairy lights strung across the ceiling, the nervous shifting of chairs, the shallow breaths of the people gathered. Everyone was waiting for someone else to speak, but no one dared move first. Claire's eyes darted frantically, looking for allies, but all she found were wide eyes and clenched jaws. The same women she used to gossip with, the same neighbors who had once praised her loyalty and charm, were now leaning away, as if afraid that her betrayal might be contagious. David cleared his throat, his attempt at composure almost laughable. This isn't what it looks like," he started, his hands raised as though he could physically push the truth back into silence. His eyes flicked to me, then back to the man standing in front of Claire. We can discuss this privately." The man let out a short, bitter laugh. "Privately? You had no problem doing what you did behind closed doors. Don't ask for privacy now, not when you've already stolen years of mine." His words sliced through the room. Claire pressed her trembling fingers against her lips, tears welling in her eyes. She tried to form words, excuses, but nothing coherent came out. Just shallow breaths and choked syllables. And I didn't move. I just stood by the dessert table, one hand resting gently on my stomach, watching. For months, I had carried this secret alone, pretending not to see the glances, ignoring the late-night messages I stumbled upon, forcing myself to smile when David's touch felt foreign. But today, the truth didn't need my voice. It had found its own. The guests were frozen in place, caught between pity for me and morbid fascination with the unfolding chaos. My aunt clutched her rosary so tightly her knuckles went white. My cousin whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath, while the neighbor across the street pulled out her phone, as if documenting this spectacle would somehow make it more real. Claire suddenly stepped forward, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, just listen. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't mean for it to happen." Her words tumbled into the air, pathetic, fragile, and already too late. The man's expression hardened. "You didn't mean for it to happen. You ruined a marriage. You tore apart families. And now you stand here, smiling, celebrating like nothing ever happened?" Her tears fell then, streaking down her cheeks, but no one rushed to comfort her. Not one person in that room reached out a hand. Because everyone finally saw her for what she was. David tried again, desperation cracking through his voice. It's complicated. We care about each other. These things don't," I finally said, my voice sharper than I had intended. Every head turned toward me. My calm smile had vanished, replaced with the truth I had swallowed for too long. "Don't you dare stand here in front of our families, our friends, and call this complicated. It's betrayal. Plain and simple." The weight of my words dropped over the room like an anchor. Even the children in the corner, playing with balloons a few minutes ago, stopped and stared at the adults who had suddenly transformed into strangers. Claire sobbed openly now, mascara streaking her cheeks, her shoulders shaking. She looked at me as though searching for mercy. But all she found was the wall I had built between us the moment I discovered her and David's betrayal. "Please," she whispered to me, her voice barely audible. "You don't understand." But I did understand. I understood better than anyone. I understood every sleepless night I had endured while she laughed with me over coffee. I understood every excuse David made while she smirked behind his shoulder. I understood that the two people I trusted most had chosen each other over me, over the family we were supposed to build. The man stepped closer to her, his voice low but steady. "You thought you could play with both of us. You thought secrets last forever. But here's the thing, Claire, the truth always shows up. Just like I did today." Her sobs turned into wails, echoing off the walls of the decorated living room. The pink balloons and ribbons suddenly felt grotesque, mocking. A celebration had become a courtroom, and she was the guilty party standing in judgment. David's face hardened, his jaw clenched. He no longer looked like the charming host or the doting husband. He looked cornered, exposed, his lies burned down to ash in front of everyone. And me? For the first time in months, I felt free. Not happy. Not yet. But free. Because finally, everyone could see what I had known all along. And this was only the beginning. The sound of her crying filled the room, sharp and uneven, bouncing off the walls like a broken song. For years I had listened to her laughter in my kitchen, her secrets whispered late at night, her promises of sisterhood and loyalty. Now all of it sounded fake, cheap, like plastic cracking under pressure. "Stop this, please," Claire begged, clutching her stomach as though the shame itself was a physical wound. "Not here, not in front of everyone." Her voice was trembling, yet there was still that trace of arrogance in her tone, the arrogance of someone who had always been forgiven, excused, protected. She had counted on me never finding the strength to turn against her. She had counted on David hiding her sins. She had counted on everyone looking the other way. But no one looked away now. The man who had shown up, the one she had left behind, the one she thought she could erase, crossed his arms and stared her down. His calmness was terrifying. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone tore through every excuse she tried to build. David muttered something under his breath, too low for anyone to catch. He looked pale, sweat clinging to his hairline, his shirt sticking to his back. For a moment, I almost felt pity for him, almost. Because in that instant, I realized he wasn't worried about me, or our marriage, or even the baby. He was worried about himself. About his image, his reputation, the whispers that would spread through our community once this story left these walls. Complicated, I repeated slowly, the word like acid on my tongue. My voice was steady now, stronger than I thought possible. That's what you call this? Sneaking around behind my back. Lying to my face. Smiling at me while you planned a life with her? No, David. This isn't complicated. This is betrayal. The words hit him like a slap. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Claire reached for his hand, desperate, clinging, but he pulled away, his shame too heavy to carry her as well. The rejection made her cry harder, her shoulders heaving as if she were collapsing under the weight of everything she had destroyed. Gasps spread through the crowd again, whispers darting from corner to corner. I saw my mother covering her mouth, tears in her eyes. My cousin shook her head in disgust. The baby shower, the day that was supposed to celebrate new beginnings, had turned into the burial ground of trust and friendship. And then, something shifted. The man who had entered, the ghost from Claire's past, turned his gaze toward me. His expression softened, almost gentle, and for a fleeting moment, I saw gratitude in his eyes. Gratitude that I had given him this chance to confront her, to confront them. Gratitude that I hadn't let their lies stay buried. "Thank you," he said quietly, "just for me." And in that moment, I felt seen. Not pitted, not weak, but strong. Strong enough to host this chaos in my own home, strong enough to face the truth in front of everyone. Claire dropped to her knees then, sobbing, begging for forgiveness no one was ready to give. David stood frozen, torn between shame and cowardice, too weak to comfort her, too selfish to comfort me. And me? I stayed standing. For the first time in months, I wasn't the broken one. I wasn't the victim hiding in silence. I was the storm. And storms, once they begin, don't stop until everything false is swept away. For a long moment, no one moved. The room felt frozen, like the very air was holding its breath. Pink ribbons fluttered from the ceiling, balloons swayed gently, and in the middle of it all, 3 broken people stood exposed. Claire collapsed onto a chair, her face streaked with tears, her voice shaking as she whispered apologies no one wanted to hear. David stood rigid, his fists clenched, shame burning on his face but not enough to make him step toward me. His silence was louder than any excuse he could have given. The man who had arrived, her ghost, her unfinished story, finally turned his back on her. "You made your choice," he said coldly. "Now live with it." His footsteps echoed as he left the house, the door slamming shut behind him like the sound of a verdict being delivered. All eyes turned to me. For months, I had lived in silence, smiling while carrying my child, pretending everything was fine. But now the truth was out in the open, and I didn't need to pretend anymore. I placed both hands on my belly and stood tall. This day was supposed to be about new life, about love, I said quietly, but firmly. And instead, it revealed exactly who you are. My eyes locked on Claire first, then on David. "You don't get to stand here and call this complicated. It's betrayal. And it ends today." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The power wasn't in their hands anymore. It was in mine. One by one, guests began to gather their things, leaving in silence. No one congratulated Claire. No one comforted David. The celebration was over, but something inside me had shifted. The baby shower had ended in ruins, but in that ruin, I found something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. As I closed the door behind the last guest, I realized the truth had finally set me free. And while they would live in the shadow of their choices, would walk forward, with my child, with my strength, and without them. The balloons, the cake, the decorations, all meaningless now. But the lesson remained: sometimes betrayal destroys everything, but it also clears the path for a new beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed in that beginning.